Hey, Champion Nation. Welcome to the Champion Nation podcast. This self-development, personal development, self-help, it is a full-time position. It's a full-time position. And based on everything that you said, especially with the awareness part, I can see why most people would rather work harder on their job than they do on themselves.
Facts. Oh, yeah, because it's easy.
Yes.
It feels good, right?
Yep.
It feels good. It's like, oh, I feel good in the moment. I'm good, right? And I don't have to worry about these things. And then you also don't have to feel the pressure of what if I fail?
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing is you don't have to feel that pressure. You don't have to think about it. It's like people that say, if I don't bet, I can't lose.
Yes.
Right? But you can't win either.
Nation, what's up? We're back again this week for a phenomenal conversation. Boy, oh boy, I could not wait until this day came when I knew that I was going to have an opportunity to sit down with the David Kitch. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a fantastic conversation, along with the host of other great conversations we had. Not only is David a leader of and founder of Edge Leadership Academy, he's also a former D1 coach, and we're going to dive into all of those different aspects of David's life. David, thank you for joining us at the Champion Nation podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this, man. I love connecting with people that have the right energy and are trying to build the right platform and spread the right messages, man. So I'm just excited to be here.
Absolutely. And we are definitely excited to be here. Our viewers and listeners are definitely excited to have you to join us today. Just briefly, David, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, man. So as you said, my name is David Kitch. I mean, most people call me Kitch. I don't think anybody's called me David since probably my mom when I'm in trouble. She still pulls it out once in a while, but everybody just calls me Kitch, man. And like you said, I'm the founder and president of Edge Leadership Academy. And so what we do in a nutshell is to arm as many people as possible with the skills that it takes to lead in their lives, lead in their businesses, lead in athletics, and win. Like, my driving mission as a human being is to get as many people into the arena and out of the stands as possible. Like, I think that there's so many people on this planet that are watching their lives go by and they have the potential and the skills to do something about it and they just don't, right? And so our whole job as a company, me as a man, is to be the driving force behind people's success. Like, we want to build a community of leaders where we're learning together, we're growing together, we're pushing each other to be the best version of ourselves, and we're getting out of that autopilot standpoint, man. So that's really what it comes down to. The vehicle that we do that through is a lot of leadership development, right? And a lot of times when people think leadership development, they think, oh, well, I'm not a manager, or I'm not this, I'm not that. Listen, we start with leading yourself. Yes. Like, that's where we start every day of the week with every single person that we work with. And so that's 30,000 foot view of what we do. We can dive into the weeds on that later, but that's not what this is about. It's about me just sharing as much value as I can with you guys and your listeners.
I appreciate that. You said out of the arena and onto the field. That's what you said?
Out of the stands and into the arena.
Out of the stands and into the arena. The stands is where it's safe. The stands is where you can cheer. The stands is where you can see everything. Why do you want to take people from out of the stands to the arena? And why would anyone want to do that?
Right. Because to me, that's fulfillment, right? Like, to me, that's fulfillment. We're not put on this planet to sit in the stands and watch other people compete in life. We're not put on this planet to sit and watch other people write their stories and have our stories written for us. Like, that's not what this is about. If you want to write your own story, you got to get into the arena. And I say into the arena because when you're chasing your vision, when you're chasing your mission, your values in life, like, it's tough, man. It's a battle, right? There's blood and guts. There's calluses on your hands. You're going to taste your own blood from time to time. But to me, when the sun goes down and it's all over, that's a life worth living. Like, I would rather do that every day of the week. And I've seen the fulfillment and the joy that it's given me. And I want to give that to other people. So that's why I try and compel people, take control of your life. Like, you have the opportunity to be the villain or be the hero of your story. But if you don't ever pick up the pen, you don't get to pick which one you become, right? And then ultimately you live a life that's dictated to you by the outside. and you're stuck in this victim mentality. You're stuck in the rat race. You wake up 30 years from now and you're like, man, how did I get here? My life is gone, right? Like there's that quote that a lot of people die at 30, but they're not buried till 60, right? Like I hate that. That scares me, man. For me personally, like if you talk to somebody, you talk to an auntie or an uncle or somebody in a family, and you talk about that one nephew or niece that went astray, right? The one that kind of went off the rails. What do they always say? He or she had so much potential.
Yes.
Right. And so
Yes.
to me, I'm like, I feel like I have a responsibility to maximize my potential and to bring as many people into that sphere as possible, so that they can feel that same feeling. Because when you're chasing your potential and you're trying to maximize it day after day, that's fulfilled success. Like you can go to bed every night knowing you traded 24 hours of an indefinite amount. You don't know how many 24-hour trades you have, but you can go to bed every night with that 24 hours knowing you traded it for something that's worthwhile.
You know, David or Kitch, you're a big guy, right? Did you play football?
I did, yes, sir.
Yeah, obviously, right? I just wanted to ask anyway. What position did you play?
Offensive line.
Okay, so your job was to protect the quarterback no matter what, even if you got to get called on a holding call. Your job
Correct.
is to protect the quarterback no matter what. So, and you're protecting the quarterback. You're a big guy. Then you're going up against another big guy. Most of us don't want to go up against people like you, right? We just don't. The average person. But our goals are much bigger than your size. So if we don't want to go up against people like you, why in the heck would we want to go up against? Well, I never wrote a book before. I want to be an author, but I never graduated high school. Why do I want to do something like that? Nah, that's okay. I just go work at, Walmart or something, and nothing against any of those places like that. But if we're talking about potential, talking about living beneath your potential, why would somebody want to push against? Because that's what you're doing. You're pushing back and forth. I don't explain to me the benefit.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think first off, you got to look at how you set goals, right? So when we look at those big goals, and right now, I'll use my own example, right? Like I want to be a 7-8 figure entrepreneur. Like I want to be at those big boy tables, right? Am I capable of doing that right now? No, that goal is bigger than me, right? So it's not about the goal. It's about the person you become on the way to the goal, right? And so a lot of times when we set that goal, we say, okay, I want to write a book. I want to do that. I want to do this. A lot of times we're not the person that has the skills or is able to do that yet. And so the benefit is the journey along the way of becoming that person that is capable of doing those big, hairy, scary goals, man. That's the benefit, right? Is the version of you that you become, because then you can show up as that version for the people in your community. You can show up as that version for the people in your family. You can show up as that version for yourself, right? For the people in your faith community, in your business, wherever it is. Like I've noticed in my own life, the more work I do on myself as a byproduct of chasing these big goals, the better brother I become, the better son I become, the better friend I become, the better man I become, the better entrepreneur I become. Like that's what the benefit is. It's the version of you. It's the evolution, right? And when you start to do that, what happens is your brain gets rewired and you start to get obsessed with improvement. So instead of looking left and looking right and comparing your journey to everybody else's, now you're just worried about your own process and you're worried about just becoming the best version of you. And what does that look like? Right? And none of us know. You don't know what it is. But as you become that new version of you and as you level up, those big scary goals that we talked about at the beginning, all of a sudden they don't seem so scary. They start just seeming like, oh no, I can do this. And then you set another big goal and you level up again. And now all of a sudden you're a better person and you're a better human and you're more happy, right? And so that's the benefit of it, man. It's not the goal itself. It's the process. It's who you become on the other side of all the adversities that you're willing to put yourself through.
Kitch, you said process and evolution. Maybe 30 years ago, process was a cool word, evolution, but this is 2023 going on 2024. Process and evolution, nah, we want stuff like this, man. We want stuff like this. There's no process. Only process is I hit submit on YouTube. My video has 1 million views. I put something on SoundCloud or whatever it is, and I have 1 million downloads. Evolution and process is not what's sexy nowadays. Talk about that in this day and age.
Yeah, I think it's quite honestly, I think it's one of the most dangerous things that's happened to our society. we live in a world of conveniences and a world of, like you said, immediate gratification, right? And if you look at the research from a psychology standpoint, the most successful people in the world, one of their key traits is the ability to delay gratification, right? And so we're sacrificing building that skill because it's a skill, right? It's a muscle. Just like you want to get stronger biceps, you got to do some curls, man. You got to put some resistance on there. And we don't want to do that. And so we're always reaching for the quick fix and the quick, the quick answer and the hack and the 2-minute abs or, whatever it is. And what happens is we don't ever expand our ability to deal with discomfort. And so then all of a sudden, when it comes to a big goal that requires discomfort, because the big goals require it, it's a prerequisite. You have to go through some sort of, I call it positive suffering. You have to go through some sort of cognitive dissonance where the version of you is not congruent with the version that you're trying to become, right? You have to go through those things. And so if you're not training for that, then when you get to those big goals that require it, you're just going to turn away and say, nah, that's not for me. And then you become what I call a window shopper, right? Then you're somebody that you look at it, you look at the price tag and you go, that's not for me, right? And so then you're talking about it with your friends and you're, well, this happened, right? Because what happens when we decide internally, when we say, I'm not willing to pay that price, we won't verbalize that to other people. We'll rationalize it, right? We'll start to get into that victim mentality and say, listen, man, I would have went to the league. Coach didn't like me.
Right.
I would have done this, right? This happened. I never got this promotion because of this. No, you didn't get the promotion because you were still in the parking lot at 9:05 when your coworkers were in making sales calls already. Let's call it what it is, right? Let's call it what it is. Okay. And so my big thing with that, when we're talking about this delayed gratification and those things, I think you just need to be clear with yourself about what you want. Right. And so there's a quote from, I think it's from, it's a Leo movie, a Leonardo, The Departed, right? Where he talks about deception. And he says, I'm okay with deception. We're not okay with self-deception. Right? Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. If you don't want to do the work, just say that. That's okay. Just say it's okay. It's not for everybody.
And I think even with that is a form of being authentic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, I think that's the first start to self-leadership.
100%. 100%. It's knowing who you are. It's knowing who you are and who you're not. Like if somebody said to me, Kitch, go run a marathon, I'd be like, I don't want to do the work.
Right.
Plain and simple.
I'm
no
not
interest. I have no interest. That's not for me. But I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to say, listen, I would, but I got a bum knee from football and, it's cold out. Like, I'm not going to make all those excuses. I'm just going to look you in the eye and say, hey, listen, that's not for me. I'm not going to do the work. Period.
So if you could take that same authenticity and say, hey, it's not for me when there's no interest, can you reverse that and say, or flip it and say, I am interested. It is for me. You
have to attach it to a why though, right? And that's why your vision, your mission, and your values are so important. Because again, psychology research shows we're more likely to develop a new habit. We're more likely to stay committed to a goal. We're more likely to make actions that take us towards that goal if the goal or the desired outcome is attached to some part of our internal narrative, right? If it's attached to our why, if it's attached to our values, if it's attached to our mission as a person, attached to our vision as a human. And that's why I always start with getting people to do that. So like the number one question I love to ask people is, what do you want in life? What's your vision? Right? And you get the deer in the headlights look from people. Because they don't know. They never sat down and looked. And I'm like, bro, you're 32 years old. You're 33 years old. You're halfway through your life statistically.
Right.
And you don't know what you want. You're halfway through this race. Why are you running the race if you don't know where the finish line is? If you don't know what you're trying to run towards?
But why do you think that most people don't know what they want? They die at 30,
because
die
we're told.
at 40.
We're told. We're in a system, right? Think about the education system. We're told, go to school, go to college, get a job, stay in that job, save your money, start a 401k, start a family, buy a house. That's it. Right? Like nobody tells you, no, find what lights your soul on fire. Nobody tells you, hey, that voice that keeps you up at night, that is telling you that you're capable of more, listen to that. Nobody tells us that in school. We train people to be employees. We don't train people to think for themselves. We train people to live in the system, right? And then what happens is the longer you're in there, the more you start, it's like people that start to be empathetic towards their captors, like when you're kidnapped, right? You start to just think, nah, this is just life. And then all of a sudden the fear of getting outside the system because it's something you haven't done before and it's something new and it requires you to change and stretch and grow and build and admit that you might fail. That fear holds us in place. It holds us in a line, right? And it holds us in the corral of what the world wants us to do, which is just stay, be an employee, play it safe, right? And it's scary, man.
You know, you mentioned school, but school is influential.
Absolutely.
But what about at home? What about your mom, your dad, your uncle? What about those influences?
Yeah, 100%. They play a huge role in forming who you become and your ideals on things, right? And if you come, so like I came from a single parent household, right? Like my mom, I was born to a single mother. I tell you, it was the best gift I was ever given because I lead with love. I learned to lead with love, right? Like that's who my mom is. That's what she does. And so, you know, I came from that environment, but I also saw a stepfather who struggled with addiction, right? And so I saw that messy stuff. Like I didn't see a healthy relationship. I didn't see, my mom wasn't, you know, a college graduate at that time. My mom didn't graduate college till she was 42, right? So like, I saw those things and I could have allowed that to influence me to, okay, well, this is just what life is, right? This is who I should be. I should go get a job as a server or as a bartender or be a bouncer or whatever, right? But on the flip side, as I kind of grew up, I realized like, oh, this is what I don't want. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want this. And so in order for me to not have this, that means I have to do things differently, which means I have to take care of academics. That means I have to take care of these things, right? So we have to be able to look at things and say, okay, what's generating this outcome? And if I continue on this path, what outcome am I going to get? Right. And so like, that's one of the reasons that I say a lot of times, like, I don't take advice from people that I wouldn't trade lives with because your inputs are giving you an output that I don't want.
Wow. I like that. I like that.
You know, yeah. You know what I mean? So you have to think about it that way. Now, here's the cool part, right? If you look at every successful family, right, whatever it is, wealthy, businesses, relationships, etc. Like I'm not talking just financial success. You look at every family like that. Somewhere along the line, somebody showed up and changed that family and made them like that, right? There was the one. That family wasn't always like that. There was the one that showed up. And so for people that come from those backgrounds that I'm talking about, right, whether it's single parent, low socioeconomic impact, or, you know, whatever the situation is, struggling with getting access to food or getting access to education, like you can be the one. Don't you want to do that? And I feel like I have a responsibility, right? Like I came from the past 3 generations of my family have been divorced. And so for me, I'm like, no, I got to be the one that breaks the curse.
Yes.
I got to be the one that does things differently.
Yes.
Right? I have to be the one that changes the way we look at education. I don't want my kids to be 40 years old and going to college. That's why I'm getting a PhD.
Right. And congratulations to you on that one, man.
Thank you. Yeah. Like, so, but you have to shift your mindset and say, okay. And again, talk about connecting this to something bigger. It's not about me. I'm trying to plant a tree that's going to give shade that I'm never going to get the opportunity to sit underneath.
I love that proverb. I mean? That's one of my favorite proverbs,
you know
man.
What I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. And so for me now, I'm able to look at it and say, I'm doing this out of responsibility to my future generations. I'm doing this out of responsibility so that the struggles that I had or the situations that I had, my family never has to go through that again. Nobody in my bloodline is going to have to go through that. Nobody in my bloodline is going to have to see addiction. Nobody in my bloodline is going to have to go through, you know, watching mom work 3 jobs and go to school and try and raise 2 kids on her own. We're not going to see that.
Right.
We're going to see opportunity. We're going to live in abundance. We're going to grow up knowing, hey, I can be a business owner. I can be a PhD candidate. I can be an author. I can do all these things. I can be a Division I coach because I set the example. Right. And so it now becomes this vision. So it's like when you run out of gas, you can look at it and I can say, okay, my vision for me is when I get wherever we go after this, I want my ancestors to be able to look at me with tears in their eyes and be like, dude, we were waiting for you.
Yes.
We were waiting for you to show up.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm talking about when I say, you know, you can flip it, but you have to be able to connect it to something deeper because it's hard, man. It's a challenge.
It is. And connecting to something deeper, in order to connect to something deeper, you have to do some self audits, right? You have to look within yourself and say, hey, and there's nothing wrong, when it comes down to admitting you suck in certain areas.
Yeah,
I think that is so healthy. Like, man,
Absolutely.
time management, I suck. Credit, I suck. You say you just go through the line. You say, hey, I suck in these areas. So that's a starting point. I live in Atlanta. You live in Philly. That's not that far of a drive, but it's a drive.
Right.
But in order for me to get to Philly, I have to know, in order for me to get to Philly, I got to know where I'm at. That's number one. But then once I discover where I'm at, then I can determine what vehicle or what mode of transportation I want to use to get there. So you've written a couple of books, The Pyramid and The Scoreboard, and congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
A lot of them talked about, those two books talk on building leadership and conducting self audits. Man, elaborate on those things once again as you utilize those things to help you create Edge Leadership Academy.
Yeah, I'd like to start. I'd like to start with The Scoreboard, even though it was the second book, because I think it's more important for people starting out, right? I think it's where you need to start. So The Scoreboard came from, I had built this audit system in my own life, and I had people that eventually started asking me about it. So how it started was, I inherently, as a human, I'm not a very disciplined person. I'm emotional. I'm impulsive. Like, I know who I am, but I learned to recognize those demons about myself. I learned to recognize those downfalls and say, hey, if I don't get a handle on these, they're going to ruin my life. Like, these are the things that are going to run my life if I don't get a handle on them. And so how do I get a handle on them? Well, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Right.
And so I started to come up with this thing where I was like, all right, every couple months, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at areas of my life and figure out what results I'm getting from those areas. And then I can start to tweak them, right? And part of that came from my background in strength and conditioning, because what do you do with a strength program? You run it for 3-4 weeks and then you sit down and you say, okay, what worked, what didn't? Now let me tweak it, right?
Right.
And so that's where that came from for me. And so what I did is I broke it down and I was like, okay, what areas of my life do I want to evaluate, right? Knowing that nothing happens in a vacuum. Each area influences the others. And so I got to figure out the system. And so what I came up with was your habits, your mind, your body, your career or your business, your relationships, and then a goal setting piece at the end, right? And so every 3 months, what I would do is sit down and literally score out each of these areas. And I would say, okay, what habits did I do the most over these last 3 months? What outputs am I getting from that? How is it helping me? How is it hurting me? And I'm being very honest with myself. Like, what positive habits did I have? What negative habits did I have? Right? I'm going through that and I'm scoring. I did the same thing for my mindset. How often am I meditating? How often am I checking in with myself? What types of things am I thinking about? What's my internal dialogue been like during these past couple months? Right? Then I'm doing it with my body. How often am I moving? What's my body weight? What am I putting in my body? What's my nutrition look like? Like, what are the things that I'm eating most often? How do I feel? Right? All these things. Same thing with sleep, right? Then I do it with my career and my business. Okay, let's look at revenue numbers. Let's look at all the KPIs that I have attached to my business, right? Now let's look at my relationships. Who am I spending the most time with? How does that person make me feel? What am I bringing to that relationship, right? What bad traits do they bring out in me? What good traits do they bring out in me? Why do I want this person to be in my circle, right? All these things. And I go through all that and I measure it all. And so it started with just for me. And I noticed in my life, like, taking off, like, the more I did this, because now I'm not waiting a year, right? I'm waiting 3 months. I can fix it after 3 months. And then I can
four times a year.
Boom, right? Yep. And so all of a sudden I'm making these jumps. And so what I started to do is share it with people. And I was like, hey, this is kind of what I do. And people were like, dude, could you write this all out? Because it was a lot. And I was like, yeah, I think I could put something together. So that's where the book came from. So I wrote it all out into a book, and it continues to evolve, right? So there's going to be a 2.0, there'll be a 3.0, because as I evolve, it continues to evolve, right? As the system evolves. But it's so important, because what it does is it brings awareness.
Yes.
Right? It brings awareness, because so much, 43% of our day, at least, 43% of our day is habitual in nature, meaning we don't think about it at all. It's subconscious.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if you start to do these audits, you become more aware. And you take off those glasses, and I call it seeing life in HD. Like, now you're starting to see the details in your life, and you're like, oh, this is how this is influencing this. This is how this is influencing this. Like if I have a bad day, the first thing I do is run through my systems. And I'm like, okay, what did I eat last night? Man, what time did I get to bed? Right? Like, but most people, what do? We have a bad day and we're like, man, it was a bad day. I'm going to have a bad week now. Right? And now it's like, it's just one of those days. Not me. I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. Let me go back. Right? Because I also have information that says I know things that make me feel good. So I can now go back to that and say, okay, I'm having a bad morning, but I can reset because I know that if I eat this food, I do this meditation, I do this thing. Now my day just got better. I'm no longer stuck in that. My snowball doesn't go all day. My snowball, I might have a bad 10 minutes. Right now I'm human. There's days that it happens, but that, those are the skills and the abilities that this scoreboard gives you when you have that awareness.
Kitch, can I please say something? Man, that is remarkable, man. I wish you lived in Atlanta, man. We can meet up.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Breakfast or something, man. This we're going to have to take this conversation offline. I'm seriously.
Yeah, no doubt.
Serious. But everything that you were explaining, it sounds so exhausting. It really does. It sounds so exhausting. But I do want to say this. Self-development, personal development, self-help, it is a full-time position. It's a full-time position. And based on everything that you said, especially with the awareness part, I can see why most people would rather work harder on their job than they do on themselves.
Facts. Oh, yeah, because it's easy.
Yes.
It feels good, right?
Yep.
It feels good. It's like, oh, I feel good in the moment. I'm good, right? And I don't have to worry about these things. And then you also don't have to feel the pressure of what if I fail?
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing is you don't have to feel that pressure. You don't have to think about it. It's like people that say, if I don't bet, I can't lose.
Yes.
Right? But you can't win either.
Not
you
even
know what
close.
I'm saying? You can't win either. And so is this exhausting? When you first start, yeah, but once you build the discipline and you build it that is just part of who you are, and you see how good, I'm not a huge religious person, but I like this scripture that you can tell a fruit or you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears, right?
By it bears, yep.
And so it's the same thing with this, right? Like if I'm planting these seeds and I see what I'm getting out of it when I harvest, I'm like, oh, this is worth it.
Yeah.
This is worth the work every day of the week. And it makes my life easier because it makes decisions for me. I don't have to think. Like people think that this is exhausting. It's not, right? So I have a vision, a mission, and a set of values in my life. I want to leave a legacy for my family to be proud of. That's my vision in life. I wear it on my wrist every single day. Leave a legacy.
I love it.
Every day. My mission is I want to inspire greatness in as many people as I possibly can. Like I said, I want to get people into the arena, right? So that's my mission. Every single day, that's what I want to do. My values, I'm honest, I'm caring, I'm driven, I'm committed to growth. Period. That's who I am, right? So every decision that comes through my day, it's very simple. I just ask myself 3 questions. VMV. Does it align with my vision? Does it bring me closer to my mission? Does it help me fulfill my values for the day? If it doesn't, it's a no. Period. Point blank. Don't have to think about it anymore, right? And that's everything. So think about it this way. We'll break it down as simple as can be. I'm driving home. I can either go home and I can put the rice cooker on for 12 minutes and make rice and I can have some chicken and have a good meal, or I can stop at Burger King. Does Burger King bring me closer to my vision? Leave a legacy? Nope. Okay, done. Decision made. Would that take 0.001 seconds?
Yeah, it's a split second, blink of an eye.
It's easy, man. I use it for business decisions. I use it for my personal decisions. I use it when I decide who I spend time with, what time I go to bed. I mean, it makes your life so simple if you do the work on the front end and invest.
I love it. But before we can do any work on the front end, before we can reap the benefits on the back end, the origin is our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can't get anywhere. You and I, we having this great conversation about, hey, awareness, da. None of that is possible if we don't have the right mindset. You have the luxury and the privilege of working with over 100 plus NCAA teams in various industries, including keynote speakers for C-note executives. Can you share, if possible, can you share a specific example where the principles of leadership and mindset translated from sports arena to the corporate setting?
Yeah, I don't think it's a specific one. I think it's just across the board. I mean, there's there's 5 things really that set people apart when it comes to like leadership and it comes to high performance, right? And those 5 things are your character, first and foremost. And then from there, it's your ability to be consistent, your ability to commit to things and show people what you're committed to. So that's your 3rd thing, right? Your 4th, your ability to be creative. And then number 5 is your ability to communicate, right? And those 5 things, if we train them, whether it's in sports or business or whatever, they're going to show up across the board. And that's when you're going to see those exponential returns. That's when you're going to see those, the returns that are outsized on the investment, meaning there's more return than there was investment, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's well worth it. And so, yeah, I've seen it across the board. I mean, we did a high performing habits seminar. This is just a recent example. Did a high performing habits seminar with a college field hockey team, right? They had been a championship caliber team before. Over the past couple of years, they kind of fell off, right? So we came in, we helped them figure out what are our winning habits. When we do this as a program, we win, right? And then how are we going to measure those things? So again, character, consistency, commitment, right? The creativity piece, and then communicating it as a group. So we went through that, and we went through all of their winning habits and all of their losing habits. When we do this stuff, we lose, period.
Right.
They measured it all season. They just finished the year. I think they're 15-3. They're the number one seed going into the NCAA tournament. I mean, it doesn't lie. You know what I mean? And that's my thing. Is success leaves clues. Right?
Yes,
so if you learn these systems and you repeat them over time, and you start to see all these results, like I think Jay-Z said, right? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the way we look at it. So when you say a specific example, I mean, it's every client that we work with. It's every client that we work with. We see it transition over.
Thank you for sharing that success story. I had a gentleman on last week. He's from Australia, Jeremy Nagel. And he deals with ADHD. And also, he's on the autism spectrum, right? ASD as well. So we talked a lot about mental health challenges, and I want to delve into your challenges that you dealt with in your personal journey. How have you designed the life that you have for yourself, and how are you designing the life for others as you navigate the challenges of mental health?
Yeah, man, it was, I had to learn my lessons, right? And so I think it's a lot of trial and error, right? And so to kind of give you a little bit of context, basically what you're alluding to here, and kind of fill your listeners in 2021 or 2020, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, right? And the way it happened was I hit a wall. I absolutely hit a wall, right? I was just doing too much. I had launched my first business. I had just finished my first book. I was working on my second. I was taking my PhD courses, and I decided to open a 22,000 square foot gym. I had never ran a gym before, right? And so I thought I could do it all, man. I thought I had this entrepreneurship thing figured out, and I was just doing too much. Okay. And what happened was I started to have panic attacks. And then I started to slide into this depression where I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to do anything. And I wanted to avoid social situations. Like and I'm a very extroverted person by nature, but it just like put me into this like cocoon where I didn't want to be around anybody. And so for me, what I realized was I had been working so hard my whole life so that I didn't have to deal with the emotions that I still had from my childhood. Like from growing up without a father, from seeing the things that I saw, from being the man of the house at 11 years old. Like I didn't want to deal with that stuff. And so I used work as a coping mechanism, and I used success, quote unquote, by the outward metrics. I used achievements to try and cover up an internal wound, right? So I was trying to fill an internal wound with external things. It doesn't work, right? And so eventually what happened was I got doing too much, right? And then I took a road trip, and I drove all the way to Georgia, and it was just me. And so now all the distractions were gone. And so now it was like my brain was like, hey, we've been giving you subtle hints that you need to deal with this stuff. Yeah. You're not taking them. So here's a big hint, dude. And it hit me over the head with a 2x4 called a panic attack. It said, hey, yo, you paying attention now? You got me now? Right? And so it forced me to deal with it, right? And so through that journey, man, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's terrible. Awful feeling, right? But I wouldn't trade it for anything because it gave me so much insight into who I am as a man. And it gave me so much insight into what I want in life, what I don't want in life, what shaped me into the person that I am. But I had to do battle, man. I had to do work. Like it was a war, right? I had to go to war with the demons of my past and while focusing on the bright future, right? And that's a balance. It's a balance, right? Like there's that quote, like if you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back.
Yes.
So like you got to have that balance. Like how do I deal with these quote unquote traumas? And I want to make sure I say this. My life was not an A&E late night special, right? Like my mom did a great job. Okay. Like it was not, there were many, many people out there that had it worse than me.
Right.
But relative to me, it's like, how do I look back on all these painful memories that I didn't ever want to think about or didn't ever want to deal with or whatever and see how they're manifesting in my life without allowing them to taint my vision of the future, right? Without allowing them to steal the joy, right? And so that was the battle, right? So I had to get help, man. I got a therapist. I got a mindset coach. I started to work on these things. And so now what I've done is I've developed stacks in my life that help me manage my mental health, but also help me manage my business and help me manage everything. And it becomes part of the system, right? And it all becomes part of this system. And so now I look for things that for me, I call them discipline alarms, right? Or things where for me, it's basically like the check engine light goes on. Like I'm like, all right, bro, like we got to pump the brakes for a second here because the system's shaking. Something's just out of whack, right? And it's keeping me from hitting that wall. Right. And so there's a lot of systems that people can build in their lives that will help them do that. And I'm more than happy to give you specifics if you want to hear kind of
sure. Yes.
Yeah. So like the number one thing for me is my launch sequence. I call it a launch sequence. It's my morning routine, right? Because it's my way of launching myself into my day. Right. And so when I talk about morning routines and launch sequences, people are like, why do you call it a launch sequence? And I'm like, because when you watch NASA launch a missile or a rocket into the outer space, they don't just flip a box and hit the red button, right?
No,
like, that's not the way it works. You know, it's
not even
this
close.
system on, this system on, this system on, right? And yet, what do we do as a human, as a society? We roll out of bed, alarm goes off, we grab our phone.
Yes.
Right? You're checking emails, you're checking social media. And I don't know about you, but I've never woken up to an email that says, hey man, everything's going really well.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see you later. Double thumbs up, right? Like I never woke up to a DM from Jennifer Aniston. No, like Nia Long is not in my DMs when I wake up in the morning, right? So like I know that there's nothing good going to come out of me grabbing my phone as soon as I wake up.
Right.
So instead what I do is I build this launch sequence where it's like, okay, I wake up. First thing I want to do is get some water in my body, get myself settled a little bit, right? Then I want to turn on my mind, right? So how do I do that? Well, I got to check in with myself first. So I'm going to meditate, right? I'm going to spend some time meditating in silence, find that peace, find that balance, right? Then from there, I'm going to journal, right? I now want to write. I now want to get some things out of me, clear up some space for the day, right? Then I'm going to start to take some things in. So now I'm going to read a little bit and I'm going to just take something in and get my mind going a little bit, turn it on, right? Then from there, I want to turn my body on, right? So now I'm going to go move a little bit, whether that's a lifting session, maybe I could just go for a walk, maybe I just stretch. I'm going to do something for my body, right? And then I got to do something for my soul. So before I start my work for the day, I reach out to somebody that I care about, whether it's family, friends, whatever. It could be a picture. It could be something funny. It could be a quick voice message. Doesn't matter. I want to do something for my soul, right? So mind, body, soul, I got to turn all those things on before I start my day, right? And that's the big piece for me that keeps me stable in my mental, right? It keeps me protected up there because it allows me to now go into the day where I've already taken care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Before I go and I need to be selfish so that I can be selfless, right? But a lot of people don't make that time non-negotiable. And I get it, man. People have family. I'm speaking as a single man with no kids, right? So it's easy for me to say I'm going to set the alarm earlier and get up, and there's nobody there vying for my attention and my time. That is true. You know, mm-hmm. It becomes difficult. But I also know I have friends who have 2-3 kids and they still find the time to do this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If it's not, then you'll find an excuse. You know what I'm saying?
And speaking of excuses, there are some goals in my life that I want desperately. Desperately. Like I will fight a bear for them. You know, there's just some goals I want desperately. Why? Because I want them. Like, I can't give you an elaborate reason why. I want it because I want it. That's it. But you often pose a question to get people to think and go beyond that fear. What if you went all in? That, my friend, is a powerful question. How do you help individuals with that question navigate, the fear and uncertainty with that question?
Yeah, the first thing I like to do with people when I ask that, right, and it started as kind of a joke, but then it became very serious. Because I tell people, like, when you want to be the one, like everybody says they want to be the one, which we talked about earlier, right? Be the one in your family. Everybody says they want to be the one. And then the follow-up question is always, what have you done in the last 36 hours to prove that? And people are like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, then don't tell me you want to be the one. Let's just be straight. Let's be honest here, right? So when we're navigating this question of what if you went all in, it starts with breaking things down into bite-sized pieces. Because when we look at it like that, and we say, what if you went all in? That's a very intimidating question.
Can be,
right?
Yes.
Because you're like, I got to change everything in my life, right? I got to change this whole thing. And it doesn't have to be that way. So instead, what I do to help people navigate this is I say, okay, let's break things down. You got your long-term goal. We know what we want, right? Now let's break it down into projects and tasks, right? So projects being a series of tasks put together, create this project, right? Tasks being things that I can do right now, right? That are going to start to move the ball forward. And if you do enough of those day after day after day, then eventually you start adding up the projects. And if you do enough projects over time, you start ending up with complete products, which is goals, right? And so it's very simple if you break it down that way, but you have to have, again, metrics and KPIs and things like that. And you have to be reasonable. Like, be reasonable with your goals, or not with your goals. I'm sorry. Be unreasonable with your goals.
Yes.
Be reasonable with what your expectations are right away.
Yes.
Right? We underestimate what we can do in 6 months and overestimate what we can do in a day.
Yes.
Right? And so that's a big piece of it too. And the other thing is just being patient with yourself. Like, I'm not perfect, right? Like, I'm not I don't have 6% body fat. I don't read 30 books a month. Like, I'm not perfect, man. I'm still working. I'm just trying to be better than I was yesterday. Right. And so the challenge there is when you say, what if you went all in just means you're not willing to quit. That's what I'm looking for from all in, right? Success is a war of attrition. It's just being able to stay in the fight longer than other people. Like, that's it, right? And all that takes is a chin. You just got to be willing to take some punches and taste your own blood and not quit, right? And say, no, I'm just going to keep moving. And so that's kind of how I help people navigate that. But it's getting crystal clear on what your specific goal is, and then being able to break it down, like I said, into projects and into tasks. And then, because once you see the task list in our mind, we're like, oh, I can do that, right? I can do that. Like, if it's, I want to build a business, right? Okay, I want to start selling t-shirts. All right. So that we know that that's the end goal. The end goal is to build a t-shirt brand. The projects then will become find a screen printer, source materials, manufacturing, distribution, supply line, marketing, all these different things that you have to do, right? Those are all your projects. So you put them across a board. Then from there, you break it down like an organizational chart with little spider webs down. And you say, okay, what are the tasks that go into each of this, right? Well, task number one is just, let me do a little research. Let me figure out what are the margins going to look like? What are other companies doing, right? Who can I reach out to? So let me make a list of contacts of people that I need to reach out to. And then what you do is you start to make, okay, on Mondays, I'm going to research marketing. On Tuesdays, I'm going to research product design. On Wednesdays, I'm going to reach out to people all day in the morning. And then all afternoon, I'm going to set coffee times with all these people, right? Thursday, I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to, people that are sourcing inventory, right? So I'm going to talk to warehouses. I'm going to get pricing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Hey, Friday, I'm going to start learning social media marketing. So every Friday, I'm going to take a course on social media marketing. On Saturday, I'm going to write down everything that I learned throughout the week. I'm going to let it marinate for a little bit. And then I'm going to get set on Sunday for my next week moving forward.
Absolutely.
Right. And like, that's how you break it down, because that's all in. You're all in at that point.
Yes.
That's what it looks like. If you're doing things every single day that move the needle, you're all in by definition.
And when you finally move the needle and cross the finish line, there's a sense of champion that rises up inside of you. And with that being said, what does it mean to you, Kitch, to be a champion?
To me, to be a champion means on a daily basis. It means when I lay my head down at night, I feel good about the 24-hour trade I just made. I just traded 24 hours of my life and my time for something that I'm proud of. Right? That's being a champion in the short term. In the long term, being a champion to me is standing room only at my funeral, man. That's what it's about for me. I want that place packed out. My legacy is the people that I impact and the influence that I put into the world. That's the bank account is just a scoreboard.
Kitch, thank you so much for sharing that. Where could our viewers and listeners connect with you?
I mean, I'm on all the social medias at Coach D Kitch. I keep it nice and simple. So every social media at Coach D Kitch. Our website is edgeleadershipacademy.com. And then we have our podcast that comes out every week on Wednesdays, the Built Not Born podcast. And we also have our Finish Friday newsletter that comes out every Friday.
Champion Nation, I can't wait. I'm stuttering. I cannot wait to go back and watch this and listen to this. Yes, I am. This is going to be on repeat all week long for me. I know it is. Kitch talked about the launch sequence. I mean, come on now. The launch sequence. You can't just go from Earth to space like that. There's a specific sequence that takes place. And he also talked about positive suffering. It's going to take some suffering to get to where you want to go. But if you know the why and you're willing to go all in, you will be a champion. Champion Nation, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Have a champion day.